When you've got two kids at home, you end up reading a lot of Dr. Seuss books, and I've called this picture Seussland because these things, they kind of look like trees that you might see in the Cat in the Hat or the Lorax or one of the Dr. Seuss books. Yeah, I don't know what these are. Maybe some sort of vegetable. It looks like lettuce maybe or cabbage. I don't know. I saw them when I was out walking around. I had to get to the other side of campus for something. I had my camera with me, as I usually do, and I saw these things. I'd actually started out by taking a few pictures of some purple things that are, you can't see them here, but they're these purple plants, and I thought, hey, purple, whatever, it looks kind of neat. Well, I couldn't find an interesting picture, probably because of the lighting or the angle at which I was shooting, but I saw these things, whatever they are, and they looked really cool. So I laid down, I snapped a few shots, but I had a problem. These things, they kind of looked like trees from another world, but in the background, you could see windows and a staircase and things that were clearly of this world. And it kind of ruined the effect for me. And I've realized, I wanted to take this photo in such a way that you couldn't easily identify what was happening. I wanted the first thing you think of to be some sort of fantastical, fictional world like a Dr. Seuss book. And then if you look closer, you realize, oh, it's a flower pot, or these things are just garden plants. There's nothing special about it. But I kind of wanted to create that initial impression. And with these windows or other things in the background, it ruined that effect. So I realized as I was scooting around and shifting my perspective that I could use that flower pot intentionally as kind of a looming obelisk in the background, and kind of to augment the otherworldly feeling I was trying to create. So I scooted around until I had the angle of view I wanted, and I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I like the razor thin depth of field here. I shot this wide open at f1.8 to get that really thin depth of field, even though if you look closely on the left, one of the branches, or whatever you call it, on that thing, I wish I had better terms for this, but one of the branches is not quite in focus because it's actually protruding into the foreground a bit, but that's okay. I'm happy with how this worked out. And sometimes you'll hear me on this blog talk about how you can shoot a lot of these things with a kit lens. Well, this one you can't, because to shoot this with this angle of view on a kit lens, it would be your lens would end up being stopped down to like f5.6 or something like that. You'd be at the really telephoto end of your kit lens, and you wouldn't be able to get this shallow depth of field. So this actually works out quite well with a 50mm prime lens on a crop sensor body, actually, which if you put the 50mm on a full frame camera, you get a better field or a wider field of view. On a crop body, it's cropped down a little bit, and on a wider field of view, you would have seen too much. And on if you would have shot this with something like an 85 or a 105, it would have been too narrow. You would only see one of these trees and not the full flower pot. I call it a tree, but I don't know what it is. So the 50 actually worked out quite well. And if you read the little tagline at the top of my blog, it says exploring creation with a 50mm lens or something along those lines. And that's sort of what I've got going on here. I'm kind of pleased with how it worked out, because I got this shot specifically because I had my 50mm lens. Despite its limitations, it actually worked out really well. And it kind of speaks again to the utility of not only that lens, but working within your limitations. Now, my lesson here is not so much a lesson, but a question to ask yourself, which is, what do you want your viewers to see or to feel? Or what message do you want to get across when you present a particular photograph? So first, ask yourself, what do you want your viewers to see? But then ask yourself, how can you make this happen with your photograph? So maybe you manipulate your surroundings. Maybe you manipulate the lighting. Maybe you tell people to look or pose a certain way. Or maybe you use Photoshop afterwards. But if you want your viewers to see something or to feel something or to think something, how are you going to make that happen given the constraints, given your equipment and your lens and the lighting and what you're working with? Now, not every shot has to be all that complicated. Maybe it's just a picture of a tree or a picture of your friend or whatever. So it doesn't have to be that complicated. But if you do want to get something across to your viewers, maybe you get it across to you, but how are you going to get it across to someone else who doesn't know you, who doesn't know the context of your photo? So I hope that works out in this picture. I hope that when you look at this, you have that half a second of disorientation where you think, what's going on here? And then maybe you look and see, oh, I get it. It's just a little garden, nothing special. But that was my intention, to get that message across, or to get that slight sense of disorientation and maybe an otherworldly feeling across. And that's then my challenge to you is, how are you going to do that in your photography given what you have to work with?